Long ghosts whisper through the trees, cold winds carrying their pleas. Lives ended, stories untold, a heart of stone, a grip gone cold. They said it was him, they swore it was clear. Blonde hair like smoke, the devil near. They said it was him, they swore it was clear. Blonde hair like smoke, the devil near. A heart of stone, a grip gone cold. Long ghosts whisper through the trees, cold winds carrying their pleas. Lives ended, stories untold. They said it was him, they swore it was clear. Blonde hair like smoke, the devil near. They said it was him, they swore it was clear. Blonde hair like smoke, the devil near.
Hello. Peekaboo, I see you. Happy New Year's Eve. Hello. And today we're doing, it feels like I haven't done this for ages. I haven't done anything with Martin. Poor Martin. He's been left out. He's been left out, hung out to dry. I've been focusing on so many other things and I've let him go. It's very sad. So we're going to reel him back in today. So for those of you that are not familiar with the case, unlike this one, good morning, Angel. I owe you an apology. I've been hibernating. Yeah, in a little cocoon. And yeah, I know you know what that's like. But I will speak to you after the stream. How's that? I was actually going to try and do something a little bit sneaky and different today. I might do an experiment, but it has to be right at the end. So, where was I? Yes. Good morning, Miss Tricia. How did you sleep, darling? Hopefully better than me. And I've got my little, hello, Felix. It's it's kitty cam as well. Felix. Hey, Felix. Wait. Hey. No. Now I've got your back to me. Back. I've got my back to you, Mum. I'm not paying you any attention whatsoever. Yes. Hello. He looks like Batcat when he gets that. You know, when cats about, the dusk hour, they start to get really antsy and they charge around in circles and just go loopy for half an hour. He has the evilest look. It is so funny. The evilest glint in his eye. All right, so welcome to the Defence Rests. I always forget to say that. I'm Jodie, and it would be fantastic if you could hit that like and subscribe button for me. It's free, it costs you nothing, and if you don't want to hear any notifications or be alerted to anything, you can just switch them off if you want to. That's annoying. Otherwise, put them all on so you know when I'm on. It every single interaction with a content creator, whether it be a like, a comment, the little hearts at the side, you know how you can send them up, flying up the side of the chat, anything like that. YouTube counts those as interactions, and the more interactions you have, the more they think that that video or that creator is interesting, obviously, because people are interacting with it more, the more they bump you up the algorithm. That's the secret. They don't monitor what we do, they monitor what you do. So yes, so this is the case. We're up to episode 6, so I would encourage you, if this is your first time here, to go back to the playlists. It's under Martin Bryant, the Port Arthur Massacre, and it is actually the world's largest, I know it's no claim to fame, but the world's largest mass murder on record to date. And recently we had another high casualty count at Bondi, and apparently there are quite a few similarities. So I've seen or heard, especially with regards to the coronial inquest or the Royal Commission. They have refused to do another one for the Bondi. The Bondi shootings. That I just don't get it. Don't get it. 2 different prime ministers, both refused. So, yes. So this happened in 1996 in Australia, in Tasmania, the arse end of the world, basically. And it is the very southern tip of Tasmania is Port Arthur, and it was an old historic, well, it is an old historic penal colony down there. So we used to have the convicts come from everywhere, particularly Britain, or the UK, and it was called Van Diemen's Land then. And it's separated by like arms of the peninsula where you have to cross over bridges to get to Port Arthur. So it's almost like a little island. It's hard to tell when you're on the land, but yeah, you have to drive over a few bridges to get to it. So it was very difficult for any prisoners to escape. So it was very secure. And it is a massive tourist destination. When you go to Tasmania, it's like a must see. I've been there. It's beautiful. I was actually there 2 years before the massacre. I went there for my honeymoon. Yeah, why you go to the arse end of the world for your honeymoon? If that was a sign of things to come. I mean, we were married for 22 years, but we are no longer. That's giving away my age, isn't it? So, now Martin Bryant lived in Tasmania, not far from Port Arthur, and he used to frequent there a lot with a friend of his called Helen, who we concentrated with on last episode. She was an eccentric heiress to the Tattersalls fortune, and they struck up a friendship and end up living as friends in the same house, in her house, together. And then unfortunately before, I think it was 3 years before this happened, she was in the car with Martin, and they had a head-on collision and she was killed instantly. Martin had some injuries and was hospitalised for a few weeks with his neck, but survived. And he inherited her entire fortune. She was the sole heir and he was the sole beneficiary. So that was well planned. Not that it was, but some luck's got to come his way, I suppose. He had 3 years to spend big. But I will also say he had an IQ of 66. And, oh, bugger, I forgot to save it. I've put together a little video, which I will play shortly, just explaining a few things as we go through the timeline of the actual massacre, because that's where we're up to. So today we're concentrating on what happened that day on the 28th of April, 1996. Now, which one are you? I think it's that one. Just download this one for a second. Share. Download. Thank you. Download. Oh, no, you stupid. Don't want it as a PDF. You want it as a download. MP4. Thank you. All right, I'll give it a minute. So, Martin Bryant was 28 years old at this point in time, and he lived, as I said, not far from Port Arthur. He frequented the actual cafe, the Broad Arrow Café, regularly with Helen for afternoon teas and the like. So he was known to staff down there. And as I said, it's a fairly isolated point, the bottom point of the peninsula. And he was, it's hard to explain, but his car was there, his weapons were there, his blonde hair was there. There's a lot of things that within his car that puts him at the scene, but there's absolutely nothing else anywhere that or no evidence whatsoever that he was anywhere near the place. And in fact, there are witnesses and victims that, you know, one guy was shot in the neck and played dead as the shooter stepped over him, and he got a good look at his face, and he's laying there so that he wouldn't shoot him again. He pretended to be dead, and he swears black and blue wasn't Martin. So I'll get into it a bit more, but so just be aware that that the mainstream media, it's never always what it appears to be. There's always an agenda, absolutely an agenda. You just save this and I can bring it up. Pull that one. Okay. That's under there. Yep, done. Okay, now I know where it is. It'll take a lot more of it. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. 100%. Teresa has been following along with me. She's been my little research assistant in the background, and is as excited as I am to dig our teeth into something new. So again, I think it was 2 years before this. As I said, his IQ was 66, so that basically puts him at the age of a 10-year-old boy, basically, the mental capacity. And so it was deemed that the government put him on a guardianship thing, basically, because they said that he was not fit to take care of his finances. So that plays a very important role in this story, because with that kind of IQ, as you're watching this, just have that in the back of your head and remember what it would take, what organizational skills, what planning skills, what the whole lot. Have that in the back of your mind through the eyes of a 10-year-old. All right. Now, I might just play this one first because, Paul, I went through. If anyone wants to dig deeper, Paul Modet from the WASP Files has been investigating this for 9 years. He's been researching it because he initially went to do a documentary on it, and when he started researching, he found so many anomalies he couldn't write the script until he. Oh, come on, how do I get back there? He couldn't write the script because he had to find the answers first. So 9 years later, he's still researching it. So, how the fuck do I find that? I went out of my files and I went into my Google Drive, and now I can't get back to I can't go back down the chain. Fucking hell. Down File Explorer, I can't get back. Oh, there we go. Videos. Woo! That was just pure ass right then. Pure, unadulterated ass. All right, where are we? What did I say about this presentation? Hey, where are you? There it is. No, I don't want to go back there. That is camera. No. Start again, Jody. Go back. Present video file. Aha. Fucking hell. Oh. Aha! Yes, okay. Stop looking, I did it.
The Supreme Court ordered a ban on the evidence being released for 30 years. This was due to be released next year in 2026, in which case the supposed evidence of the case would have been presented to the public, supposedly for examination, public examination. However, after I announced that I was going to make a film in 2016 about the Port Arthur Massacre, TAHO, which is the Tasmanian Archives and Heritage Office, had a video conference in which they stated that they were going to digitise all of the files of Port Arthur. The audiovisual material, the file works, is that because people often claim, how could so many people on such a major event not know that this was a setup? Mm-hmm. The easiest answer to that is that if you compartmentalise information, if one party over here only gets this much information and another party over there gets this much information, and these people that were involved and these people were there, but there's a disconnect between those compartments, then they only have a limited viewpoint of their perspective on that experience. So no one gets an overview of the actual event itself and how it all links up. The researchers, people who've written books and people who've studied Port Arthur as I have, make an attempt to make a connection between those compartments. Mm-hmm. And that's where they come up with these discrepancies, with the anomalies, with the legal improprieties, which are factually on record, the witness statements that don't add up, the witnesses that say the shooter who I knew Martin Bryant was not Martin Bryant. Once you start to make those connections, the picture becomes clearer, the overall picture becomes clearer, the truth starts to emerge, supposedly for examination, public examination. However, after I announced that I was going to make a film in 2016 about the Port Arthur Massacre, TAHO, which is the Tasmanian Archives and Heritage Office, had a video conference in which they state
I will say, oh, that's nearly it. I was listening to him today and I paused and it was the worst pause face ever. It was so funny. It was nearly like that.
that they were that I was going to make a film in 2016 about the Port Arthur massacre. Tahoe. Massacre.
You ever do this? I do this all the time.
Tahoe, which is the Tasmanian Archives and Heritage Office, had a video conference in which they stated that they were going to digitise all of the files of Port Arthur. The audiovisual material, the file works, is that because people often claim, how could so many people on such a major event involved, and these people were there, but there's a disconnect between those compartments, then they only have a limited viewpoint of their perspective on that experience. So no one gets an overview of the actual event itself and how it all links up. The researchers, people who've written...
I actually sent him an email tonight to see if he would be, because he was posting a couple of hours ago. He's done a couple of shorts. So I emailed him to see if he wanted to join us, because it just so happened that we were both online at the same time. So hopefully he gets back to us.
Books and people who've studied Port Arthur as I have make an attempt to make a connection between those compartments. And that's where they come up with these discrepancies, with the anomalies, with the legal improprieties, which are factually on record, the witness statements that don't add up, the witnesses that say the shooter who I knew Martin Bryant was not Martin Bryant. Once you start to make those connections, the picture becomes clearer, the overall picture becomes clearer, the truth starts to emerge, supposedly for examination, public examination. However, after I announced that I was going to make a film in 2016 about the Port Arthur massacre, Tahoe, which is the Tasmanian Archives and Heritage Office, had a video conference in which they stated that they were going to digitise all of the files of Port Arthur, the audiovisual material, the file. If foreigners die on Australian soil, or if people die in a fire or die by violent death, all of which happened at Port Arthur, state law decrees that there must be a coronial inquest. Our Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, quashed the inquest. He overstepped his jurisdiction, and as a result, we didn't have a coronial inquest into this major crime in Australian history. The coroner at the time, the state coroner in Tasmania, Ian Maddison, commenced a coronial inquest, but he ceased that inquest, and a letter that he wrote stated that he could not continue to do so because his findings may be in contradiction with those of the Supreme Court of Tasmania. So that says that basically he didn't wish to continue a coronial inquest because there was a possibility that his findings may contradict those of the Supreme Court.
No, that's it, I think. No, it's not.
The second aspect is that we didn't have an open trial. The reasons for that are that the perpetrator, Martin Bryant, who was convicted and sentenced as a result of the crime, pled guilty. So once you plead guilty in a criminal trial, they don't have to present evidence, so it's case closed. Throw him in jail, lock him up and throw away the key, which is what occurred.
Very much. That was me. That was me
Martin
putting
Bryant,
spaces.
once he was incarcerated at Risdon, held a not guilty plea staunchly for 5 months. He was kept in solitary confinement. By his own admission in his interview, which was redacted from the pre-trial hearing, he was tortured. He said, quote, "They pulled my arms up behind my head and they made me lie down on my burnt back," because Martin was burnt in the Seascape fire. Now, that was not read out in court. If that had been, a prosecution and a defence would have been in very shaky territory about the legitimacy of that record. Martin held his not guilty plea for 5 months, and his defence lawyer, John Avery, who was later on disgraced and sentenced for misappropriating his client's funds, he went to jail. Martin's defence lawyer, after 5 months, went to
He
his
wasn't a
mother,
lawyer's
Carleen,
asshole.
and said, "You have to help me to get Martin to change his plea to guilty." Carleen, his mother, and she wrote this in her book, My Story, which is freely available, went to the prison with John Avery and told Martin that unless he changed his plea to guilty,
True.
he would never see her or his sister Lindy again. So Martin changed his plea to guilty. So that doesn't mean that he wasn't guilty, but it certainly casts some aspersions on that plea because he was basically threatened with being cut off from his family.
It's just ridiculous. Is that the end? I think it might be. All right. I'll quickly watch. Yeah. I'm pretty much going to be presenting a few snippets from Paul's, the Wasp Files, huge array of information because he's got so much detail and I've got bits and pieces here and everywhere. There is one. Actually, I might play that first. Where's the share this one instead? No. Remove. Add to stage. You know, this woman that did this particular video is extremely intelligent and well versed. This is going to be really weird. Watch myself. Okay. Play. Yes, I got sound. No, unmute, Jody.
When you practiced your shooting, where did you hold the gun?
All right, this is his. I'm just doing this for a bit of background so that when we watch it, you know what's happening. But this is the police interview that he did. I actually think there is a few mental health or perhaps IQ issues there as well, Simi. I don't think she's. I think she might be a sheep short in the top paddock, just quietly, just saying. That's all. Just an observation. But yeah, it was horrible. And she is wrapped with guilt, and she has to live with that for the rest of her life. But I actually found out the other day, like for the first 3 years that he was in prison or incarcerated, he was refused any visitors, any phone calls, any communication with anyone. And Carleen was told that he didn't want to see anyone, no mail, nothing. And she has a letter back from the prison saying that, you know, he doesn't want to see anyone. They've got the mail there for him when and if he ever wants to read it, blah, 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 blah. Because if you can imagine, he had no idea, like the actual sentencing hearing, when they actually read the charges out to him, because there is 35 first-degree murder charges. So he is actually serving 35 consecutive life sentences for something that I don't believe he did. That's my opinion. And you are more than welcome and free to make up your own mind. The evidence is all out there. The squiz. But yeah. So he's sitting, in my mind, he's sitting in the cell when he gets there in isolation, and he has no fucking idea what he's done, why he's there. Can you imagine that? What's going through his head as a 10-year-old? Yeah, it's like the punishment that never ends for something that he still to this day has not discussed it with anybody, not his mother, nobody. So yeah, after first 3 years, nobody, and then he was allowed her only, just her, as a visitor. And I think in the last 5 or 6 years. Her and her sister, the sister Libby, have moved now to Western Australia, and he has nobody visiting him. No way. I don't know if they communicate on the phone or anything, but yeah. And he is treated extremely badly. Extremely badly. Bad.
Okay. Oh, bugger. Press the wrong button.
Oh, look at those nails.
Actually, maybe I should.
Do you like my book? This is my notepad here. Things I need to get done, but probably fucking won't. But making lists makes me feel like I've got my shit together. It's my favourite notepad.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
Still sends a shiver down the spine. Nowadays, we like to think that his eyes are a little crazy, and that expression is
saying that. You know that photo of him in the, I think it's the blue jumper, that his hair's all messy and he's got this crazy expression on his face. That was photoshopped deliberately to look like that. Motherfuckers. Photoshopped. Oh. Nope. Yeah. Oh, fuck, we'll just play there.
ever so... What's his physical... 15...
I hate this. The play button is so tiny, you can never get it. Okay, context. This was recorded last year.
What?
2024. Where is my... There.
Oh, yes, I've been called many things.
Okay. Play.
10 years after the Port Arthur massacre, that photo of Martin Bryant still sends a shiver down the spine. Nowadays, we like to think that his eyes are a little crazy, and that expression is ever so slightly off kilter. But that's all in hindsight. Apart from being a bit troubled as a kid and intellectually limited, really, Martin Bryant could be anyone's son.
Yeah.
But he just happens to be Carleen Bryant's son. And the
his
burden
mother.
of that has been devastating for her. Carleen Bryant is tormented by the same questions that trouble us all. What made a seemingly ordinary, if dim-witted young man go out and kill 35 people?
Exactly.
And have we learned anything from that dreadful day?
And I'll say this, they say he's dim-witted, but he was 28 years old. He had a squillion dollars. He had a girlfriend. He was traveling all over the world. What the fuck? What motive would he have? Just saying.
Today, Martin Bryant lives here, inside the walls of Risdon Prison on the outskirts of Hobart. He is serving 35 life sentences, 1,035 years without parole, cast into outer darkness and banished from society forever. His only visitor is his mother, Carleen.
Not anymore.
Martin is in jail. He will never be free, will he?
No.
Who will visit him when you're no longer around?
Probably nobody. I'm the only person who visits at the moment.
What's his physical condition today?
He's overweight.
He's a man into
Too
his
much
40s.
overweight, mainly from through the medication, which puts weight on, and also lack of exercise.
And his psychological condition, his mental state, what's he like?
That's confidential.
Yeah, how's that? How's that?
Even if I knew.
She is not allowed to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're consecutive. Yes. Mm-hmm. She's not allowed to say what her mental state of her son is. Confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't talk about it. All I can say is that Martin was diagnosed about 3 years ago
3 years
as
ago.
having Asperger's syndrome.
They waited how long? 27 years before they evaluated
Oh,
him as having
no.
Asperger's.
I got that date wrong,
Copy that.
so scratch that.
Hang on. That's better. I was looking for that one. Okay.
Stop looking, you
Now,
found it.
this bit you're going to watch next. This is the trailer that Paul put together. And I want you to watch it because there is a hidden message in there.
Oh, is there?
He's made this trailer up. This is a trailer he was making to take to the the movie places to show his work off and get contracts, basically. So just have a look and see if you can notice anything.
This is the trailer of the movie that he was going to make.
That's his girlfriend.
Why is the sound off? Yeah. Well, the sound's not working on that.
No. No.
With that in mind, in viewing the trailer, one of the
Did you pick it? Anyone pick it?
Hey, Christine. How you going, darling?
I didn't the first time I watched it. It wasn't until it was pointed out to me. But I will let Paul. This is Paul. This is the producer. I'll let him explain what he's done. It's very clever.
main components that I wanted to introduce was in relation to the identity of the shooter at Port Arthur. The mainstream narrative, of course, accepts that the sole perpetrator was Martin Bryant with his distinctive long blonde hair and surfy look, driving the yellow Volvo with the surfboard on the roof,
Okay.
which was his vehicle.
A. Martin Bryant does not have a driver's license. And I'll show you why.
So one of the notions I wanted to introduce into the trailer was the possibility that there was a person impersonating Martin Bryant, a ring-in, if you like. To that end, I had two different actors portraying Martin Bryant. One of them was obviously wearing a blonde wig.
Mm-hmm.
When I first screened the trailer, virtually nobody picked up that this was a different actor. If we consider the notion that the shooter at Port Arthur was a ring-in, a professional who was sent in to, in essence, impersonate Martin Bryant, I wanted to show that that could be done by getting an individual and putting a blonde wig on them and, in essence, portraying themselves as Martin Bryant. There were, of course, scenes that we filmed in the trailer where there was a gunman shooting, and I did shoot scenes where the shooter had fired from the hip, which was generally reported by witnesses on the day.
Mm-hmm.
I perhaps should have left at least one of these in, but instead I did have the...
So witness...
What made us...
Chuck, stupid bloody button. So witnesses that were there and survivors have all, well, not all of them, but there's quite a number of them that said that the shooter held the gun. It was an AR-15 at his right hip, and that's how he fired the weapon, basically just by moving his hips. Now, the actual pattern of injury, because obviously it was in the cafe at Port Arthur, most of the injuries were at head height, which would equate to the people sitting down at a chair and that gun being at that level, basically. Just hold on. Just hold on.
Seemingly ordinary, if dim-witted young man go out and kill 35 people.
Exactly.
And
hang on.
And
Martin Bryant, I wanted to show that could be done.
This man has put
by
9
getting an
years
individual and putting a
research
blonde wig
into
on
this.
them,
So just bear with
and
me.
in essence portraying themselves as Martin Bryant. There were, of course, scenes that we filmed in the trailer where there was a gunman shooting, and I did shoot scenes where the shooter had fired from the hip, which was generally reported by witnesses on the day. I perhaps should have left at least one of these in, but instead I did have the second ring-in Martin Bryant firing from the right hand from his shoulder. Generally, reports were that Martin Bryant was a left-handed shooter.
He is a
When
left-hander.
you practiced shooting, where did you hold the gun?
On the left.
So you're left-handed.
This is his police interview that
right in
day.
his hand.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Yeah.
This small.
So if you held a gun, you would pull the trigger with your finger on your left hand.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. And did you ever practice shooting from the hip?
No, no.
Never.
But all the
Like most people, they have
Right.
questions they want
This-
answers to.
Yes.
I don't know whether you'll get the facts.
This is one of
When
the
he's dead. All right, we'll wait for that for a minute. I've been trying to find the actual video, and I think it's so many on there. Because it's two parts basically, and I'm addressing the first part of it tonight. So it was two completely different scenes. So one was at the actual historic site, and then he left and it went to the toll booth, and then it went to a service station or a gas station, you call it. And he allegedly took a hostage there, and then it went to Seascape Cottages where there was an 18-hour siege before the place was set alight, and he came out running out on fire, and that's how he was arrested. But there is the actual footage of I'll keep playing this while I'm looking for it. But this is actually so Wendy Skur is an employee of Port Arthur, and she was employed in a dual role. She was doing tour guides, and she was also the first aid officer. So she would teach everyone CPR and made sure that everyone was up to date and skilled. So she was the first responder there. She walked in and locked eyes with the shooter, and as she turned to go out the door, that's when the shooting started. So she was on scene right then and there, and she believes that it wasn't him, or she knows it wasn't him. So have a listen to her. I'm just trying to find this file
that was there at the time, and she believes that she saw the shooter.
The coffers, because they were some of the one that was really against me. Call me a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not.
Well, look, I don't label people, and I certainly don't judge people. And as I said, what I've uncovered has made me ask a lot of questions and go, look, this just doesn't add up. But there's certainly very, very strong anecdotal evidence, factual stuff on public record that seems to suggest there was more going on than met the public eye, put it that way.
Oh, yeah, sure was. People say, why won't you let it go with me? Well, I just say, I'll never let it go till the day I die.
This woman was persecuted by her community for telling the truth.
Ostracised, yep.
The biggest thing there, the door handle, it wouldn't open. The exit door, the fire door, it wouldn't open. It was jammed.
This is in the cafe.
Stacked up there in that corner. I'd all been trying to say, nobody tried the door. I thought, well, how do you know you weren't in there? But then I tried the door because I wanted to help and get those people one off the other. But I couldn't fix them.
The fire door.
But anyway, I tried the door and I realised the door handle went up and down, but it wouldn't budge.
So the fire door was faulty?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. There was some talk about it having a faulty lock, but then I heard that it was nailed. So who would have nailed it?
That lock was a cover-up. That was a cover-up, the faulty lock business. They went to a lot of trouble with that. That's the whole lever up. I made the call to headquarters 130.
So she's called 911, oh sorry, 000 here at 1:32 in the afternoon. What time did they respond? To a mass shooting.
Yeah, that's us. Came towards the cafe and a couple of bullets come through there, or one come through, just missed me. Well, that's fine. That's not the problem. The problem is I made a phone call there at 1:32 to the police. I was so upset that nobody come to help us. We waited till about 7:30, 20 to 8 for an ambulance.
6 hours.
For a police car. We had no tape round guys, so there we were, 31 of us. To look after 500 people. On our side, there were 32 dead.
Yeah.
And here we are. There was one man came in at 4:30, and he was only in there to gather witness names, get statements off them. One man with all those people. I can remember getting on the phone and saying, get some fucking police down here. So that wasn't until after 7:30 that the child come in.
So the reason for that delay was because they were apparently waiting for the tactical response unit, and they didn't want to come onto the site because it was unsafe because there was an active shooter.
They came in and protected the crime scene. Now you see photos of the Broad Arrow with the blue and white tape around it. That crime scene was not protected, and all those poor people that had dead people in there, that they were allowed to go in. We never had the authority to stop them. So she was wide open. All the evidence was getting bullets were being taken off the floor. But what can we do? That's one thing I wanted answers to.
Yes.
Why?
Mass shooting.
Why do this to us?
Biggest one in Australia.
Because I can tell you it was a very traumatising time.
Yeah, there was a lot of mention of the fact they mobilised everything from the Special Operations Group to the Marine Police, that they were basically held up and they were told just hold off at Tirana.
They were kept at Tirana. They had the barbecue. One of the blokes come down and got his wife, and he just drove through the roadblock. He said, ask the police down there. They said, no, they're having a barbecue at Tirana. And it was 2 days.
There's a bit where she says.
And I have in the EMA report, which is a federal government document, the cafe, he was staring at me. But when I got really close to him, his eyes, there was something about his eyes, he wasn't nice looking at all, and I didn't know Martin Bryant either. I went into the cafe and ducked out the side door, but just after that, he must have followed me. And the shooting started, but I know why he was looking at me now, because I had a work uniform on, and he saw me go into the cafe. I hadn't even thought of that for a few days until Martin Bryant, he just came in the newspaper. And he was that much better looking than this fella. This fella had long, straggly hair. He wasn't, nice at all. Martin Bryant was quite snappy as a boy. Nice dresser and everything, and it wasn't the same one.
Is there any chance at all that it might have been Martin Bryant who had, been so unhinged that he'd lost his kind of look, so to speak? Is it?
I don't think so. Now, people that saw him close to what I did, like Graham Collier, he's shot in the throat.
Graham Collier.
We're going to do a deep dive on him.
And he watched him the whole time. He shot in the throat, he was down on the floor, partly paralysed. And he said, I was sort of making out I was dead because there's that much blood coming out of it. And the bloke stood right around him. He didn't pull the trigger. And Ryan watched him. And he said it was not Martin Bryant. Swear to it.
He still doesn't communicate a lot, does he? He doesn't talk about the events.
No, he doesn't. He's never talked about them.
Because maybe he doesn't
Would you
know.
like him to?
Yeah, for sure. Martin was different, I'll put it that way. But as far as abusing people and being nasty, no.
Right.
No.
All right. Now, we'll go to this one. This actually has real video footage of the scene. So, graphic content, okay? I'll put the warning banner up. Where is it? It is. Not may, it does, okay? Consider yourself warned.
It was a training video which basically looked at the overall investigation into the Port Arthur massacre, the crime, the response by the police. There were interviews with some of the witnesses. But then later on in the video, there was some very distressing footage that was taken by the police where they videoed the interior of the Broad Arrow Café. This included some very upsetting images of the deceased victims still in the positions in which they'd been killed. As the video pans across the interior of the Broad Arrow Café, we can see on the table where the abandoned Prince sports bag is left, the gun bag. Very clearly next to it is a black video camera. Now, Nitram, the film that was made, in essence, portraying Martin Bryant as the sole perpetrator of the killer. In the final scenes of that movie, even they portrayed a scene where Martin Bryant goes into the cafe, places the gun bag on the table, takes out a video camera, sets it up, hits record, and then picks up the gun and walks out of frame. And that was the end of the film. So the crucial question that needs to be asked is, did the shooter bring a video camera into the Broad Arrow Cafe to record the massacre of the civilians inside that establishment? And if they did, what happened to that tape? You'd all imagine that if somebody recorded the shooting that took place in there, it would comprehensively 100% determine the identity of the gunman. There's only one problem with all this evidence. The tape has never seen the light of day, nor has any evidence about the ownership of that video camera, whether Martin owned a video camera, though the police confirmed that he did, and whether that was the video camera that was seen in the footage that was leaked, the police training footage. Now, that tape, amongst everything else, including the DNA and the fingerprints and the ballistics, which should have been taken from the Broad Arrow Cafe, would once again comprehensively determine the guilt of the shooter. And yet that tape has never seen the light of day or a court of law. So the question has to be asked, where is the tape? Where is the camera? There were reports that the camera case itself was located in the abandoned Volvo when it was left at the toll booth after the shooting that took place there. But the camera is clearly visible on the police training video when they pan across the interior of the Broad Arrow Cafe. That is evidence that the authorities could comprehensively end any controversy or debate with by simply saying, we have video footage of Martin Bryant in the cafe because he filmed himself. And yet that hasn't been discussed. There has been no determinations on that. And there certainly hasn't been any release of the video that would show that Martin Bryant was there. We know that the abandoned gun bag that was in the Broad Arrow Cafe was a Prince sports bag, a tennis bag, if you like. There was also verified reports that Martin Bryant had attended a shopping centre with his girlfriend Petra Wilmot and purchased the Prince sports bag and was apparently seen measuring its length. Ostensibly, this bag was used to transport the rifle inside the Broad Arrow Café. This bag was left abandoned on the table, and within that bag was a combat knife that was wrapped in a bloodied towel. Damien Bugg, who was the chief prosecutor, said that the DNA on the blood on the knife was consistent with that of David Martin. Now, that in itself is an inconclusive statement because DNA is not something that's inconsistent or consistent. It either is or it isn't. It's, of course, convenient that the shooter had left evidence that he had killed David Martin by leaving behind in the gun bag a bloody knife wrapped in a towel, which was later recovered. The other unusual aspect is that witnesses stated that when the gunman had exited the Broad Arrow Café, he was carrying another large bag. Now, there were reports that a shotgun was fired inside the Broad Arrow Café, though Gerard Dutton did not include this in his ballistics report, and that later the Daewoo semi-automatic shotgun was found in the boot of the Volvo when it was abandoned at the toll booth. That ostensibly means that perhaps there was another gun bag that was containing potentially the Daewoo 12-gauge shotgun. But this is, of course, once again, yet to be determined. So the question is, how many bags were there? And why would the shooter exit the cafe with the one bag and just leave the other behind? These are all unanswered questions that point the finger to the fact that we do not have the answers to some very crucial questions. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the WASP Files. Feel free to share far and wide.
Now, I do have my timeline. Let's get rid of that. God, I'm going to do this again. Oh, yeah, I'm just this thing. Cool. Okay. Okay. Add to stage. All right. Let's fix that. So this is a forensic timeline. I dug deep. All right. Bigger. Get rid of all that shit. Oh, I'm going to have to make myself a little bit smaller again. No. 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 Actually, maybe that might flush. Move that down a little bit. Motherfucker. Has anyone seen Udahef or heard from him at all? Right, that looks a bit better. Save. And I'll make it a bit bigger again. All right, hopefully you can see that. So, the day of the shooting was April 28th, 1996. What's that? As I work, I can't but thinking the real culprit. Yeah, exactly. Yes. 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 Yep. The real culprit is still out there. It's like the McAlberts all over again. Because he was the perfect patsy. So, and prior to this, the only, like the timeline that the media portrays is that Martin set his alarm for, I think, 6:30 in the morning or something that morning, which was a very unusual thing for him to do. Now, I realised going through all of the evidence that everything that points the finger at him or suggests that it was, unusual is all based on someone else's account. It's not based in fact or evidence, or do you know what I mean, or hard proof. It is based on someone's 2 cents worth, basically. So the fact that he is allegedly setting his alarm for 6:30 from the girlfriend, no one can prove that. The only thing they can prove is the time that he turned on his security alarm that morning. But so at the site that day at Port Arthur, there's so many things so many coincidences, so many, I can't even think of the word, but you'll see as we go through. So 11 a.m., the site normally opened for tourists. And then the ferry tour to the Isle of the Dead goes every hour, runs backwards and forwards. And that particular morning, it was a Sunday, I think, and the weekends obviously are the biggest tourist times. But that particular weekend, and that had never happened before, all of the site managers, so all of the higher up experienced managers, left the site to go to some training thing. Why it couldn't have been done during the week, I don't know. But that meant that there was, skeleton staff and junior staff at Port Arthur that particular day. And in that area, that region of Tasmania, there were 2 active police officers on patrol. And at 1:24, those 2 police officers were diverted. So there was a call in for a reported heroin OD. That was 1:24 p.m. So and it was like the furthest away from, like it was the outskirts of their area that they covered. And when they got there, it was identified as a hoax, and it was actually, it was a reported heroin cache, like a big dumping of heroin, basically, and it was identified as soap powder. So they were lured away as far away from Port Arthur as possible 3 minutes before the shooting. Okay, 1:27. Where are we? The shooter begins at the Broad Arrow Café. Between 1:27 and 1:35, the sustained gunfire inside and immediately outside the cafe. The victims are shot at close range. Multiple eyewitnesses report rapid movement and reloading. He reloaded once. And reloading inconsistent with panic firing. And between 1:35 and 1:40, that's when he leaves the area. There is no police around, so there's no intervention. And then apparently there's a couple of victims that were parked. They had buses, like tourist buses, coming in and out, and they were parked beside the cafe. And there are a couple of people that were shot next to them as well, next to the buses. And then on the exit, as you're leaving Port Arthur, you have to it's down the bottom of a a hill. So at the top is the toll booth where you buy your tickets and you buy your pass if you want to go onto the Isle of the Dead, and you get authority to come in onto the site basically. And so you have to pass that on the way out as well. Sort of it's 2 lanes. And there were more victims, or 4 victims shot up there as well. 2 of them being 2 young children. So that was between 1:40 and 1:45. Now, the gunman was driving a gold BMW that he had stolen apparently, from the car park at the base near where the buses were. But there's also witnesses that have made statements that BMW was parked at the toll booth at the top of the hill in front of the Martin's Volvo, okay? And there were 4 occupants in that Volvo. One of them was the shooter, who was in the driver's seat. And the witness stated that they sat in the car and were talking, and then the gentleman from the back seat got out of the car, and so did the gunman. They went round to the back of the car. There was an argument, and pretty much the people that were inside that vehicle were unalived one by one. So then the BMW drives off, and they stop at a gas station, and Glenn Pearse and Zoe Hall were parked in the car, and the gunman took Glenn Pearse as a hostage and shot his girlfriend Zoe Hall in the driver's seat, and then drove on to Seascape Cottages, which wasn't far away, and that's where the second part of this massacre continues. So it was a total of 35 people that lost their lives that day by the alleged lone gunman. So we're going to do the Seascape Cottages in the next episode because there's too much. I've spent days and days trying to cut this down to something that would fit into a time frame, and it's impossible. There's so much out there, and there's so much information I've got. I've tried to include everything, but I'm trying to also give you, because what people saw was the mainstream media narrative, okay? And as Paul said, the more you dig into looking into this stuff, the more stuff you find, and you go, "What the fuck? That doesn't make sense." What? So, like the car. I mean, just so happened that Martin had his passport in the car. Really? Who carries their passport in the car with them? And he could recite the numbers by, he knew them off by heart. He could just recite them. So it's convenient that his passport was located in the alleged shooter's vehicle to identify him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we won't go into the evening one because that's and then there's more, so much more missing from the next half, like the siege itself. It's just bizarre. But there's plenty of stuff that you can go and have a look on the WASP files. He's just got heaps and heaps of info there, and I can sit here for half an hour trying to go through them all, but I won't find it. What else did I do? Oh, the side-by-side timeline. Okay. Let's share this one instead. Move you across there. Okay. All right, so this is a comparison pretty much of what the official narrative was and what the actual documented evidence was. Over. All right, so prior to April 1996, there was no forewarning. The massacre was spontaneous. That's what the official narrative said. But repeated public warnings of an impending Tasmanian massacre tied to the gun law debates. There is actually documented evidence that it was commented twice. There needs to be, because at the time the government that was in were trying to make the gun laws the same around Australia, and Tasmania was the one that was holding out. And so the comments were made, oh, it'll take a massacre in Tasmania before the gun laws change. But do with it what you will. So on the 28th of April, the official narrative stated that there was normal operations at Port Arthur, whereas the actual documented evidence and discrepancies about that, there was a code brown, that's right, the hospital, the Hobart Hospital, which is 10 minutes away, it's the main hospital there, had just done and revamped and trained everybody up to speed their emergency and disaster activation plans and protocols. So they knew them off by heart, fresh as a daisy. Yeah. There was also the purchase of a 22-body hearse, for the medical examiner, to remove mass. And nowhere else in Australia has one. It was ordered specifically and delivered a few weeks prior to this, so that it could transport multiple casualties, up to 22. At 11 a.m., the media protocol says that there was no significance noted at all, whereas the documented events said that the senior Port Arthur site managers actually went to their, I think it was like a training day or something like that. They weren't there anyway. They weren't on site. 1:24, the police resources were deployed normally, but in reality, only the 2 local police diverted to a fake heroin call, leaving the peninsula effectively unpoliced. 1:27, the media narrative says that there was a lone gunman, which was Martin Bryant, began shooting up the Broad Arrow Café. When it's documented that, yes, that's when the shooting begins, but there are multiple witnesses and their descriptions differ on the shooter's appearance, and some do not match Bryant. Now, there was 200 people in that cafe that day, and of those 200 people, two identified Martin Bryant as the shooter. Only 2. 1:30, the gunman moves alone through the site, whereas witnesses report show that shots from different locations were coming at them. Wendy said she went outside the back and there was bullets coming, whisking past her head from the the bush on the other side of the cafe. But also at the Seascape Cottages, there is an audio of the hostage negotiator and Martin. Allegedly, it does sound like him, so I'm happy to say that that was him. And he's asking Martin how the hostage is going. And Martin's like, oh, yeah, they're good. I'm just going to make them a cup of tea and take them down a sandwich and what have you. Rah, 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 rah. In the background, you can hear gunfire still going. And the police tried to explain that away as coughing. But we'll get into that in the next episode. So the media represents that the gunman drives up to the toll booth, hijacks the BMW, and abducts Glenn Pearse, whereas the timeline relies almost entirely on the police reconstruction of that event. Early witnesses who knew Bryant said that the gunman was not him. And then the siege at Seascape, basically. Why they had the tactical force team was training that day on the peninsula, on the beach there. So they were all within Kui. And there was also a huge training session and what do you call it? Convention, I think, of the top trauma surgeons in Australia. So they're the ones that you would call for such emergencies as this. They were all in Hobart that weekend. Yeah. So why they didn't why they didn't initiate that earlier on in the day, they let it drag on for 18 hours overnight. And the only way they got him out was to light a fire. But they are saying that Martin used accelerant and started the fire himself. Yet when he came running out of the building, it was his back that was on fire. Because that's where you're going to douse yourself, isn't it? That's where you're going to get splashed. He actually had third-degree burns to his back. And he was, it took him, months to recover from that. I would hate to see his back with the scars because he was only in the hospital for 6 days. 6 days. Yeah. Right at the point where the perfect timing for infection at the week post. Anyway, I digress. All right, so chronologically, the site opened and operated for normal tourists and visitors. Behind the scenes, the emergency preparedness was unusually high, as I said, with the trauma doctors. There was helicopters already in place as well, was there? Like that. Then the shooting at 1:27. Witnesses described it as chaos, the delayed police response, and the lack of immediate command presence. So, yeah, they had no senior staff. And what was Wendy Skerr, the woman that you heard speaking earlier, that said that it wasn't Bryant. She was the first responder there, basically. She was triaging everyone. Pretty much says the same bloody thing. A lengthy siege continued. So right from the get-go, there was a rapid narrowing towards the single suspect before any investigation had begun. And at the time when Martin came out of that cottage on fire, the newspapers already had the day's headlines basically saying he was the killer. So don't tell me that that doesn't taint any opinions, basically, because that's just, it's not on. They should know better than that. Take the jury pool as well, but it never went to trial, and that's the problem, because none of the other evidence was ever tested, weighed, measured, questioned at all by anyone. So they pretty much have free rein as to what they're claiming, and to double down on that, once the sentencing had occurred, everything from the investigation was packed up. And then it was placed under the highest level of don't know if you call it secrecy, but it's like you need top clearance from like the Governor General just to gain access to them. So they were basically like gag ordered, sealed until it was initially 30 years. And as Paul said, when he said that he was going to do some investigating for the documentary, they added another 60. So that took it to 2096 or something like that. So no one can access any of those records at all. It's basically bits and pieces and scraps that you put together yourself, going through all the the redacted 50 pages of the of the hearing. Yeah. Why would you start at page 50 in? What happened before that? What was presented? So my biggest issue with this case is not like I'm not here to determine Martin's guilt or innocence. You know, I'm giving you the information and the tools, and you can make your own decisions on that. But at the end of the day, it's not really our decision to make. It's for 12 of his peers to make. It should go to the jury. And it was never, ever given that opportunity. So your rights as an individual, you have the right to a trial, a fair trial. You also have the right to effective service of counsel. So you have the right to a defence lawyer. And if you can't afford one will be appointed for you. Blah, blah. He had neither of those things happen. Taken away from him. Also, with his IQ being at 66, he is actually determined as disabled and was on the disability pension. So then he's also protected by the Anti-Discrimination Act of Australia. And he should have been appointed a guardian, and that guardian and his defence or legal counsel must be present with him during any and all interviews, questions, statements, whatever. They must both be present, and it states that you actually have to allow additional time. You need to present the evidence or, the facts to the accused in whatever mode of communication that they understand the most. Yeah, all these provisions are actually put in so that the defendant can understand what he's being charged with and how the process works. Blah blah blah. And as I said earlier, at the sentencing hearing, his face was absolutely shocked. His response to the charges, and as you know, his plea was coerced by his own attorney. Took him 5.5 months, and he did absolutely fuck all to present a defence for him. Whether or not it was an insanity defence, or he did actually have a psychiatrist assess him. I think it was 4 days after the incident. And of course, he'd had a lot of psych assessments prior throughout his life, and the only one that mentioned that he had an issue with cruelty to animals was the one that was done after the incident. Yeah. So, what else was I going to say about the trial? Although no trial. So yeah, there was a task force in Tasmania set up to investigate the massacre, and they apparently did a really huge investigation into it. But no one has ever seen any of those results because they're the ones that have been sealed. So I don't understand why they basically claim that it's to protect the victims and their families. But that's bullshit. Like, it's 2025 nowadays, okay? if you want to look on the internet and type in what happened at Port Arthur or whatever, you can find out. And you can, as you see, you can see all the graphic details that you need if you want to. So how could the fight for truth and then having to perhaps view some of those scenes and that evidence, I don't get it. You know, they didn't want to see it. They would be told that, you know, this is evidence is shocking and it's horrible and it's fucked. If you don't want to watch it, turn away. Well, that's the problem, my darling. This is why it's the only way that I think that anything will ever, well, the only way I think in is via his human rights being not met anywhere at all. It's sort of like the Miranda warning. If you weren't read your rights, if you weren't read the Miranda warning, then anything you say or did after that is fruit of the poisonous tree and not admissible in court. Okay? So they needed a scapegoat. He was basically a 10-year-old boy. He had no idea what was happening. They coerced his guilty plea. They didn't bother putting a defence together. There was no trial, so none of it could be questioned. And they knew darn well that at an IQ of 66 was not capable, like they would have been deemed unfit to go to trial, one. Two, I found out today that an IQ of 66, you needed to have the guardian to even enter a plea because they were not capable of making that decision. So you've got to think he's been isolated now for 30 years and only had his mum visiting him. The only other person that if prison is that strict and has not allowed any visitors, the only person they cannot not let in would be his legal representation. So somehow we have to find someone who is prepared to take this on and go and find out for himself whether or not his rights were upheld, which I don't believe they were. So then that will force the hand of the Supreme Court to reverse the gag order so that the case can be properly assessed and all of those documents can be reviewed. But he has been found guilty of this crime, or the 35 of them. It will never be retried because that's double jeopardy. It attached. As soon as he pled guilty, double jeopardy attached. He's charged, sentenced, done. So it can never be retried again. So if it's deemed that his rights were unmet, it would be they would have to acquit. They would have to shut it down. They would have to. The concern that I have with that is that I've had other people question is that he's not responsible then to go out and fend for himself and live on his own. But it will be a process if that does happen. And I do believe that, you know, they have the same as you, they have their parole assessment, you know, what is it? They do that assessment once they're sentenced. What's it called? Come on, brain. You know what I mean. They get assessed just to see what is the best probation. What's the best scenario? What's the best set of things that we can put in place to support this person? What do they need to do? Do they need to, you know, do a course on this or that? Or, you know, they try and make it as supported as possible. We even have dedicated homes, albeit they're not anything nice, but we do have particular suburbs and particular streets where it's allocated purely for people coming out of jail to go to, so they actually have a place to stop. You know what I mean? They're not going back onto the streets, so they have catered accommodation for them so that they can just plunk in one place, and that's one less hassle they have to deal with regards to trying to get back into society and perhaps back into employment, whatever. So yes, I don't think that he's necessarily got the skills to support himself on his own. And I would think that he would be recommended to go into some sort of low care psych hospital. I don't know what you call them over there. Who knows? Oh, you have halfway housing. Yeah, this is similar. I think it's like a temporary step up until you get your shit together, and then you can move on and do your independence. The only thing that I see that could go wrong with places like that is that you've put all of the people who have, if they didn't know how to commit a crime before they went into jail, they sure as shit know one by the time they come out, and you put them all in the same place. That's a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion. Well, you know. Yes, he was definitely coerced. So there's so many factors to this that just make no sense. Let me see if I can find it, because I took ages to try and do it. No. Unresolved questions. Okay. Oh. I did the siege. We'll do that next episode. Yep. Because that's got even more fucking what the fuck moments. Way more what the fuck moments. Oops, my bad. Alrighty. Well, I've got to. I don't want to. Tanya wants me to go out to a pub with a band, an 80s band, albeit that's fine, 80s. 20 years, and she wants me to come with her. Like, there's a group of them going, and the closer I get to it, the more anxious I'm getting. Mainly because it's. I feel like I'm like an encumbrance almost. Like, for me to go out to, I haven't been to a pub for years. It's going to be noisy. There's going to be so many people there. So I'm already freaking out, having lived alone for so long. I won't be able to speak to anyone because the band will be too loud. I don't drink, but I've got to pay an $80 ticket because you get 3 free drinks for watch the band. I can't just take, I suppose I could, I don't want to walk into a pub with a walking frame, okay? But then I'm just going to look ridiculous and I'm going to be in pain if I don't use it. Or Tanya suggested I take my mobility scooter, which is fine. I'm happy to do that. But I need a special taxi to take it. And Tan's like, well, we'll chuck it in the back of my car. You won't lift it to the back of the car. And the problem is that the special taxi that takes those things, I have to pre-book to actually make sure that they are open after midnight. to take me home. It's too much. Like it's triggering me. 80s band. I can put my fucking stereo on full bore and do an 80s list. I can't dance. We thought about getting a wheelchair. And I could hire a wheelchair for fuck all, like $25 a week. But that was the manual one. What happens when you need a manual one? It kind of helps if your arms work properly and you haven't got torn ligaments in both shoulders. Yeah. Just saying. It's the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I just can't. I can't. I can't. Anywho, that's my dilemma. Oh, look, we've got 2 kitties on the bed. Mr. Felix, hello. This is this one here. That's Felix. Gucci, Gucci, Gucci. That's head here. Legs, belly, back legs. And then we have Mr. Clumsy up here. Right there. Clumsy. Clumsy. Hey. He's funny. He curls himself up into the tightest ball. You cannot pick which is his head and which is his ass. Yeah, I can't even stand up, let alone fucking dance. I mean, I could probably have a few drinks, but then that will make me dance. Can you imagine me the next day? Fuck me. It's just, no, I can't. I've just broken a fucking rib falling over going down a step, for fuck's sake. Oh. And New Year's Eve is it's not something that I've ever really gotten into. And Tad's like, but you can come back and you can have we'll have 2 hours here, party here before we go there, and then when we come back, we'll all party back at my place. I'm like, and what does that look like, Tan? A lot of drinking? Yeah. I'm like, dude, I'm going to sit there and watch drunk people, for fuck's sake. You're not helping matters. Anyway, enough of the whinge. Miss Teresa, don't disappear once the stream ends. I will pop back up and we can have a behind the scenes chitty chat that's not live because I want to test it. I want to test something, and I want to talk as well. All right. If I've forgotten anything or not touched on anything for this part of the actual massacre, I will catch it up with the next one, which is the second half of which is the siege. That's 18-hour siege at the Seascape Cottages, which we'll be doing episode 7 of next week. So there is another video coming out. I've actually done a deep dive and done a bit of research into the difference between corruption and conspiracy. And you'll be, well, I was actually surprised. I was surprised. And then I was even more surprised at how that came about. And a lot of things fell into place. So keep a lookout for that. So put your notification bells on, hit the like, hit the subscribe. And if you can't be good at it. I'll see you when I'm looking at you. Hasta la vista, bitches. Bye-bye.
Hey there, thanks for stopping in. We hope you will join us again. We all look forward to next time. We got to talk about true crime. Clues. Justice served in an honest fight. crime tales till the verdict's right, solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule and the defense rests. Our true crime family is great. All types of topics we debate. Smash that like and ring that bell. Hit subscribe, you might as well.